in Karnataka. Karnataka, as such, presented a strong opposition to the British rule in India. But the present Karnataka was not existent then. Karnat or Carnatic, it was spread out. It was not in the present condition. It was under different principalities. It was scattered among various principalities before we had our state with all the principalities integrated. The British had been exploiting the farmers. They were exploiting the laborers. This exploitation created lot of insecurities across Karnataka. Poverty lingered. Due to this situation, there were rebellions against the British. In this chapter, we will be looking into these rebellions which came to the fore time and again. Zamindars, they were battling against the British. They were not happy. They had to pay heavy taxes to the British. British never cared about the natural disasters which spoiled, which devastated the production, the food production. But there was no unity among them. Though all the zamindars and kings were fighting almost one common enemy, it's really a sorry state of affairs then that there was no unity among the zamindars and kings. During that period, especially the 18th century, 1701 to 1800, we call it as the 18th century. Father and son duo from Mysore, they put forth a very strong opposition to the British. They were Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. And it was during the period 1761 to 1799. Let us look into the background picture then. In the beginning of the 18th century, one of the strongest Mughal emperors ruling Delhi, Aurangzeb, died. It was 1707. Thereby, the Mughals lost control over South India. The Mughal rulers who succeeded Aurangzeb, they were not good at administration as Aurangzeb was. They were weak rulers, and the huge territory that Aurangzeb had under his control, they could not administer well, they could not hold power in the vast expanse of the territory of Aurangzeb after his death. Especially in the south, the Mughals lost their control. So the local principalities, kingdoms, they gained control over the areas in the south. Lot of political struggles took place. in the Karnataka region in the south. 1704, one of the strongest rulers of Mysore, Chikkadevaraj Odeyer, he expired. This created lot of problems with regard to succession and administration. Again the same picture we get. The rulers who came to the throne in Mysore were not as powerful as Chikkadevaraja Odeyer. Their administration did not impress the people very much. Then, at that time, we see an ordinary soldier by name Hyder Ali joining the king's troops. He joined the Mysore army as an ordinary soldier. It's quite interesting to trace the growth of Hyder Ali in the kingdom of Mysore. He was very shrewd, and he rose into prominence owing to his military skills. He had administrative powers. He had military skills. And within a span of few years, he became the de facto ruler of Mysore. The king is there, but Hyder Ali turns to be more powerful than the king. Hyder Ali rules in the name of the king. The king turns to be a de facto ruler. To put it in simple words, the king turned to be almost a puppet. The king turned to be a puppet. The real king of Mysore got reduced to a titular head. Only for name's sake, he is the ruler. He has the title, but the powers are vested with the shrewd army officer, Hyder Ali. He was known for his innovations in arms usage and swift actions in the warfield. War after war, Hyder Ali fights, and he almost comes out successfully in the regional, local wars he holds. And the soldiers in the army, they appreciate his capabilities. He sets up a modern army and trains them along the European lines. As I said, he was a very smart general. He turned to be a smart general. He was studying how the European soldiers acted. How did those generals act? How were they smarter than the Indian armies? He used to make studies and apply their strengths in strengthening his army. Thereby, he became the Dalawai. Dalawai is the local word for commander-in-chief. He became the commander-in-chief of the army, and he sidelined the puppet king then, Krishnaraja Odeyer the second. Krishnaraja Odeyer the second. See, an ordinary soldier, by his nature, abilities, potentialities, he rose to the position of the Dadavai or Commander-in-Chief of the army. Now we come to the first Anglo Mysore War. Altogether, 4 wars were fought between Hyder Ali and Tipu and the British. Under Hyder Ali, mainly 2 wars, and later under Tipu, 2 wars. We call these as Anglo Mysore Wars. Anglo means British, the Anglicans, the English forces against Mysore. So the first war, it was fought for a period of 3 years. Let's see what these reasons were. Hyder Ali built a strong army. He had built a strong army and he had annexed many regions in the south, including Bidanur, Canara, Serra, Malabar and Sunda. The British were keenly observing the rise of Hyder Ali and they were unhappy about it because the British were imperialists. They wanted to build up a strong imperialist regime here in India. And now Hyder Ali had turned to be an impediment. He was a hurdle. He was blocking their way to higher levels. Hyder Ali also took French support in training his army. The French were the arch enemies of the British. No doubt the British turned to be very angry with regard to Hyder Ali's moves. This alarmed the British. The British felt enough is enough. We have to put an end to Hyder Ali's growth here. If he turns to be a very successful king in the south, the British will not have any existence here. They will get kicked out of India. So the war started. The British, along with the Marathas and the Nizam of Hyderabad, it's a triple alliance now. 3 strong forces coming together. The British, the Maratha army and the Nizam's army, Hyderabad Nizam. All these 3 came together. They built up a triple alliance and declared war on Mysore. But Hyder Ali, as I already told you, was very shrewd. He was able to bring the Marathas and the Nizam to his side with skillful diplomacy. The British were cunning. The Hyder Ali was in no way less than the British. He was able to read every move of the British and act. Otherwise, how will he be able to sideline his own king and become the commander-in-chief, a strong force? He paid the Marathas to turn them neutral. He bribed them. He paid a huge amount. The Marathas turned happy. They withdrew. They did not support. The war continued for a year and a half without any conclusion. What does it mean? The war did not come to an end. No conclusive end. No decision. It did not end. Hyder Ali went on changing his strategy. Even the British historians say they were getting taken aback by the various strategies Hyder Ali used to build. He used to change his strategies. And it is a real wonder that he suddenly appeared within a distance of 5 kilometers from Madras. His army reached the beach of Madras. The British were taken aback. It came as a huge shock to them because the move of Hyder Ali had made it clear that he is going to attack Madras next. There's panic in Madras. They were confused. The British did not know what to do next. The British were in a state of panic and they were wondering as to what should be their next move. Here you have the map of those days. This Anglo Mysore Wars, first and second, 1767-69, 1780-84. You see Mysore there. Huge kingdom. When you say Mysore, we think of the present Mysore district. No, Mysore was a huge kingdom then. Almost it reaches close to Cape Comorin. See, look around Mysore, you have the Maratha kingdom on one side. To the northwest of the Mysore kingdom, you have the Marathas, Peshwas territories, it's written, Peshwas. Then to the north of Mysore, you have Nizam's territories. The capital was Hyderabad. And with the dotted points, dots, we have marked northern Sarkars and the Madras area. They were under the British. Then you had many other principalities too. Travancore was to the south. Mangalore was under the control of Hyder Ali. Mahe, which was earlier under the control of the French, was also under Hyder Ali. So this was then how it looked. Mysore was a strong kingdom. Now, with the British, the Marathas, the Nizam of Hyderabad, we thought they are on one side, but the Nizam and the Marathas were pulled back and the war went on. I told you, Hyder Ali's army was on the outskirts of Madras, that stationed on the beach of the Bay of Bengal on the outskirts of Madras. The British were under total chaos and panic. The English decided that they should somehow enter into a treaty with Hyder Ali. It was very clear that the treaty was one which made the British get humiliated. Actually, they had lost it. If Hyder Ali had pushed forth, anything could have happened. So on April 4th, 1769, the Treaty of Madras was signed by Hyder Ali and the British. That brought the first Anglo Mysore War to an end. As per the treaty agreement, the conquered territories were restored to each other. They had to be given back. It was also agreed that they will remain friends in future and help each other in case of any foreign attack. But this treaty remained only on paper. For the British, it was a treaty of convenience. The British wanted to gain some time and hit back. That was the reason why Mysore headed for another war. Second Anglo Mysore War, 1780 to 1784. Let's see what the causes were. The Marathas attacked Mysore in 1771. Earlier I told you, somehow the Marathas, Hyder Ali had been able to keep them away. This time they attacked Mysore again. But the British refused to honor the Treaty of Madras. They did not support Hyder Ali. See how cunning the British are. When Marathas attacked Mysore, the British should have helped Hyder Ali in facing the Marathas. But the British did not do so. They refused to honor the Treaty of Madras. They did not support Hyder Ali. As a result, Hyder Ali's territories were taken by Marathas. Hyder Ali lost that battle. He had to buy peace with the Marathas for a sum of rupees 36 lakh and another annual tribute. After defeat with the Marathas, Hyder Ali had to pay a reparation of 36 lakh rupees to the Marathas and also agrees to pay an annual tribute. Every year he has to pay a tribute to the Marathas. You call it as kappa. So, Hyder Ali agreed. He had to somehow come out of this sticky situation. But Hyder Ali was very angry on the British now. He had decided that he has to deal with them firmly. And he started hating the British like anything. Here you get the reason as to why Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan hated the British. Hatred. When the English attacked Mahe, Mahe was a French possession on the western coast. The French had been contained by the British, you know. The French had territory on the eastern coast, that was Pondicherry, and one on the western coast, that was Mahe. So they had been contained, restricted to these two areas, defined very well. The French cannot move further. But the possession was, French possession Mahe was under the control of Hyder Ali. The English attacked Mahe. When the English attacked Mahe, Hyder Ali declared war on the English. It was in the year 1780. Okay, let's look into the course of the war now. Hyder Ali forged an alliance with the Nizam. Hyder Ali was shrewd. He won't take back easily. He was one who would admit defeat and keep to himself. He had been wounded by the British. He is a wounded tiger now. He forged an alliance with the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Marathas because he was paying annual tribute to the Marathas too, and he defeated the British forces in Arcot. But in the course of the war, Hyder Ali died in the year 1782. That came as a big relief to the British. But Hyder Ali's son, Tipu Sultan, whom we call as the Tiger of Mysore, was in no way less than Hyder Ali. He was in Malabar then. He continued fighting the British. Sir Ayr Coote, who had earlier defeated Hyder Ali many times, he fights with Tipu Sultan, but Tipu Sultan was a great commander. I told you, he was a great force to be reckoned with. And ultimately, Sir Ayr Coote, he is a great general. He ends the war with the Tipu Sultan inconclusively, without any decision, clear decision, with the Treaty of Mangalore. The first Mysore War ended with the Treaty of Madras. The second Anglo Mysore War ended with the Treaty of Mangalore. Now, as per the Treaty of Mangalore, that was on 11th March 1784, both the parties agreed to return the captured territories and prisoners to each other. So that was the result of that, and the second Anglo Mysore War came to a conclusion without a very clear decision as such. Now we come to the third Anglo Mysore War. This was fought under Tipu Sultan. What were the causes of the war? The British knew that Tipu Sultan is going to be a huge bloc, just as his father. Tipu would outbeat his father if he is allowed to grow. The British started improving their relationship with the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Marathas. They knew they alone will not be able to fight Tipu Sultan. They wanted to develop military relationship with the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Marathas. Tipu Sultan, who assumed control of Mysore after Hyder Ali's death, developed contacts with the French, relations with French. He took their help. Almost it was happening clandestinely, secretly to begin with, but later it was very clear, and the British were following it, following every footstep of Tipu Sultan. Tipu Sultan, he built a very hefty military force. He develops rockets. He utilizes European tactics, European skills, European methods in combating the British. He also refuses to free the English prisoners taken during the Second Anglo Mysore War. Actually, as per the Treaty of Mangalore, Tipu had to release them. First of all, Tipu Sultan gains some time and later he refuses to release them. He keeps them in his strong prison at Srirangapatnam. Tipu declared war on Travancore in 1789. Travancore, I showed you on the map then, it was a friendly state of the British. And British had an agreement with the Travancore that they would help them in case of any necessity, any armed struggle. So Tipu declares war on Travancore in 1789. It is as good as declaring war on the British. In 1790, the Governor General of Bengal, Lord Cornwallis, he declares war on Tipu. The British are firm on their decision now that they have to put an end to Tipu Sultan in Mysore. Without that, they will not be able to have their imperialist tendency move ahead. He'll be a block, he'll be an impediment in the way of their speedy imperialist growth in India. Tipu was defeated in the first phase of the war, and his forces had to retreat. A very sorry state of affairs. Tipu had to withdraw. Tipu had to move back. Somehow he had to end the war. Later, the English advanced towards Tipu's capital of Srirangapatnam. And Tipu, he felt that Srirangapatnam may fall into British hands. Tipu starts bargaining for peace. When you know that you may face defeat, what is the way out? You bargain for peace and somehow try to gain time and build up your forces for the next fight. So what was the result? The result was very painful. I repeat the words. Very, very painful for the mighty Tipu Sultan, the tiger of Mysore. The war ended with the Treaty of Srirangapatnam in 1792. As per the treaty, Tipu had to cede. Cede means give away, surrender. Tipu had to surrender, give away half of his kingdom to the English, to the British, including the areas of Malabar, Dindigal, Coorg and Baramahal. It was against the interests of Tipu Sultan. He had to pay a war reparation of rupees 3 crores. Say, about 200 years ago, rupees 3 crores was a huge amount, very huge amount. It was forced on Tipu, and Tipu did not have that much of money in his treasury to pay. What did the British do? Again, inhuman method the British followed. They said, as you cannot pay the huge war indemnity, you surrender your children. Tipu had 2 lovely children. His 2 sons, you see in the picture there. He surrendered his 2 sons. He was in tears. The British, Lord Cornwallis, takes away his 2 children and keeps them in his custody and tells him, Only after you pay your dues, then they will be released. You can make out how horrible, how inhuman, how dastardly the British were. Here you have two maps. One of the Third Anglo Mysore War and the other one after the Fourth Anglo Mysore War. The Third Anglo Mysore War, you find some of the areas of Mysore being taken away by the British. Mysore has got cut down in size. A small piece to the northwest of Mysore was taken away by the Marathas. Another piece to the northeast of Mysore was taken away by the Nizam. In Panchatantra stories you see, no? And the animal is killed. Each of the beneficiaries will have his part. And the British kept parts on the west, on the south and on the east. Mysore was cut to size. Mysore was cut to size. And you see the next one. That is after the Anglo Mysore War. You see, Mysore has got cut down further. It's almost got halved. Mysore became a principality under the British. So that's in the Fourth Mysore War, which we will be studying now. So to the north of Mysore you have the Nizam's territories. To the west, to the east, you have got covered by different territories, different principalities. Let's study the Fourth Mysore War in detail to start with. I have explained you the situation in which Tipu had got caught after the Third Mysore War. He had to cede many parts of his territory, point number one. He had to give away 3 crore rupees to the British, 3 crore rupees. And he had to part away with 2 of his children when he could not pay the entire amount. They would be returned by the British only after he pays the dues. Now let's see the causes. Tipu has gained time. He is not a person who would surrender. What were the causes? The Treaty of Srirangapatna failed to bring peace. It was Srirangapatna Treaty, it failed to bring peace. The Third Mysore War only opened up the gates for the Fourth War. So between the Tipu and the British, the Fourth Mysore War was slowly taking shape. Tipu also refused to accept the subsidiary alliance of Lord Wellesley. Cornwallis had been called back. Now Lord Wellesley was here as Governor General. Lord Wellesley was instrumental in bringing subsidiary alliance. Under subsidiary alliance, the Indian kings had to keep the British military in their kingdom. They had to spend money for the upkeep. A British resident would also stay in the kingdom and he will keep watch on all the moves of the king. He cannot have any agreement or treaty with anyone else other than the British. Almost it is as if a king has surrendered to the British. So Lord Wellesley, he wanted Tipu to sign the subsidiary alliance. In return, in case the king is attacked by somebody else, neighboring king, the British would come and help. That is the understanding. But Lord Wellesley tried to force it. But Tipu did not want to become a subsidiary state under the British. Tipu aligned with the French. Instead of aligning with the British, he aligned with the French now. No doubt, the British would be angry on him, and the British saw the threat and they decided that Mysore has to be attacked and nullified. So the war started. 1799, Fourth Anglo Mysore War. The first war, second war, the third one, all these three were indecisive. But the fourth Mysore War, Anglo Mysore War, was a decisive one. The British wanted to put an end, nip it off, and say that Mysore is removed from the map. So angry they were. Mysore was attacked from all the sides. Marathas, the Nizam of Hyderabad, and the British, they attacked from all the four sides. You can see in the map how Mysore is covered. The Marathas and the Nizam invaded from the north mainly. Tipu's troops were outnumbered 4:1. Tipu's troops were around 30,000. British were around 50,000. Added to that, you had Nizam's troops and Marathas troops. So, the triple alliance of the British, they were almost 4 times Tipu's forces. No doubt, Tipu's forces were a well-trained force. One of the ministers of Tipu Sultan, Mir Sadiq, you must have heard his name. He was treacherous. He had an understanding with the British. The British almost made him believe that he would be the next ruler of Mysore after the Fourth Mysore War. And Mir Sadiq, at the right opportune time, when the British had surrounded Mysore, the fort of Srirangapatnam, he calls forces at one particular point in the fort for payment of wages. The forces were cleared from that point and the British were given the signal to enter in. The British sneaked in. And with that, the outnumbered forces of the British, they were able to gain control and take control of Srirangapatnam. Mir Sadiq, he was the key reason how Tipu fell. Tipu died fighting. Tipu dies defending the city of Mysore and Srirangapatnam. Srirangapatnam was his capital then. It was a very tearful incident that the tiger of Mysore died on the battlefield because of the treachery of Mir Sadiq. So this was a decisive end to the Fourth Anglo Mysore War. Here you have the pictures. Tipu, his rockets you see there, his rockets with French technology. He had developed his own rockets indigenously. He had not bought them. He had indigenously had built the rockets. It consisted of a tube of soft hammered iron of about 8 inches diameter, and he had his own technology you can study. And you see the huge pile of his missiles and rockets there. A picture of one of his rockets is given there on the side. But all these turned to be futile because of the cunning step of Mir Sadiq. So, what were the results of the war? Every war we divide it into causes, course, and results. Causes, what led to the war. Course, how did the war go on. Then results, what was the end point. So Tipu's the result was that Tipu's territories were divided between the British and the Nizam of Hyderabad. The core area around Srirangapatna and Mysore was restored to the Wadayar dynasty, who had been ruling Mysore before Hyder Ali became the de facto ruler. Rulers were there in Mysore, so they were restored. So it became a principality under the British. So the period Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, it came to an end. It left its own marks on the Karnataka history. Mysore entered into a subsidiary alliance with the British. As per subsidiary alliance, a British resident was placed at the Mysore kingdom. He will be in the court of the king and he will be observing each and every move of the king. The kingdom of Mysore remained a princely state thereafterwards, directly under the British till 1947. After we got independence, it chose the Jayachamrajendra Wadayar, the then king of Mysore, chose Mysore to become a part of the integrated India, and he surrenders his kingdom to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Thank you.